This program is brought to you by Teachers College, Columbia University. Please visit us online at itunes.tc.columbia.edu.
I am absolutely delighted to be able to introduce Ashley Gleitman as one of our featured speakers. Once again, I ask that you look at your program and read her biographical sketch. She's recently admitted into the doctoral program and also has been nominated to receive a fellowship because she's just that outstanding. In addition, after she speaks, we're going to have Lisa Matthews talk about her experiences in Jamaica, and then we're going to have Sharon Spence talk about her experiences in Kenya, and then Amrita will talk about her experiences in India, and I will do my best in the remaining time to represent Shameen Castor and her project in Haiti. But all of this is a part of a larger Provost-funded project called Building Local and Global HIV/AIDS Prevention Capacity, something like that. Without further ado, Ashley Gleitman.
Okay, thank you. So I tried to include a lot of visuals and videos because I know after lunch it's difficult to stay awake and everything. So I'm going to be talking about my project, Capacity Building in Togo. So when I was awarded the fellowship with the research group in Disparities in Health, Dr. Wallace asked me, where can you see yourself adapting and implementing this training? And as it turns out, a friend of mine was in the Peace Corps in a small village in the north of Togo, and she had recently opened up an HIV/AIDS clinic. But for reasons of stigma, it was difficult to get people to the clinic, and she was telling me that they needed some sort of educational program. So it was just too serendipitous not to do it, and then I set off on this journey to implement this training in Togo. So the first step was doing pre-training one-on-one interviews with Togolese immigrants in the New York area. And from these interviews, I found out a lot of really interesting cultural insights. They told me a lot about that I would encounter stigma. Depending on who I was speaking to, some of the older people said to me that I should never say the word sex or homosexuality. Other people felt differently. They informed me about some cultural practices that could, facilitate the transmission of HIV/AIDS, such as ritual scarring, sharing blades, cutting the umbilical cord often, with breaking a bottle even to use that glass, and telling me that if a man dies, his brother can marry his wife. They also talked about dry sex, which is the practice of intravaginal insertion of drying agents, and how with the economy, men can't afford to have as many wives, so each wife is now having more babies, and so that's why this insertion would make them more desirable. And they also let me know that the people in Togo would be very receptive if I included a lot of stories and sketches or skits to show them how good behavior could lead to a good future. And also in terms of scheduling, I was going there during farming season, so that was important to consider when deciding when to hold the training, on which days. So just to give you a little idea of where exactly Togo is, it's in West Africa, and I was in a village in the north called Keitao, which is in the Kara region. So I was very close to the border with Benin. We actually walked to the market in Benin several times. Kara is actually the third largest city in Togo too, so this was really interesting because Keitao was a very rural village, but it was only 20 kilometers from one of the largest cities, so it was kind of a crossroads between rural and urban. And the situation in Togo has a population of 6.5 million people. The life expectancy at birth for men is 55, for women 60. The probability of dying under 5 per 1,000 live births is 107. The total expenditure on health is percent of gross domestic product is 5.5%. And then something that was really, really, really exciting for me to learn, because when I was there in August of 2008, the government didn't have any programs to give out free antiretrovirals. There was a rupture in the stock, and even some of the people with the highest economic status could not obtain these medications. So as of November 2008, they started distributing some free antiretrovirals to people that were currently on them, as well as 4,000 new people. However, this is happening more in Lomé, in the capital city, which is in the south, so we're not really sure yet how this is going to affect the village of Ketao. And in January 2009, the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria announced a $94 million plan over the next 5 years. So $25 million of this is going to go to stocking antiretrovirals. The estimated adult HIV prevalence here is about 4%, but like I said, it's likely much higher because these statistics come mainly from a few clinics in Lomé, in the capital, and so the village I was in, for example, few people there had ever even done HIV tests. And you can see that it's kind of plateauing. The annual number of AIDS deaths per year is about 150,000. And this I thought was really interesting, that these behavioral trends. And so the first graph here, the first chart shows you the percentage of women and men aged 15 to 49 who've had sexual intercourse with more than one partner in the last 12 months. And you see men there at about 22% and women at about 3%. And then in the next chart, we see what percent of these people used condoms during their last sexual encounter. And you actually see that men answered that they've been using condoms, about 35% of men have used these condoms, whereas only closer to 20% of women. Okay, so the training manual that I adapted to implement my training was Dr. Wallace's manual, combining HIV/AIDS peer education and combining African healing wisdom and evidence-based behavior strategies, so each one can teach one to be safe from HIV/AIDS. And the manual was based on 3 theories for behavior change: motivational interviewing, that we learned a lot about this morning, as well as stages of change and relapse prevention. So now I'm going to take you along this journey with me, traveling to the festival grounds, because that's really the metaphor for this training. And in order to arrive safely at the festival grounds, which is a stage of safety, it was really important to use a buddy system and to look for our peers to offer social support. So here I'm arriving in the village of Ketao, and this was the road that I took every morning from the house that I was staying in to the school where we did the training. And in adapting to my new environment, I really relied on some of the things I learned during my one-on-one pre-training interviews. For example, that I should always only use my right hand when shaking someone's hand, or when doing any kind of interaction, along with other traditions and stuff. So then, within the first 3 days of being there, we had a meeting at AED, which is the clinic that my friend Ami Delahousse, the Peace Corps volunteer there, helped to open. And we met with a few people that she had selected as potential trainers. And we talked about the application process, who were our participants going to be. And I came with these application forms, and I was really excited. Maybe we'll do a radio show, or maybe we'll post them in the market or pass them out, and we'll see who wants to attend this training. But I was told actually that this was discrimination, because so many people were going to want to attend the training, that how could I tell people this opportunity exists but you can't take it? So I was really, really grateful to have the insight of these community members, because what they suggested was that we should ask the chief of the village to talk with the chief quartiers. which are the chiefs of each section of the village, and that each chief quartier should select one female and one male member, and that the director of the high school, and high school students there range from about 18 to 26 years old, that the director of the high school should then also select 10 females and 10 males. So we had a lot of meetings, a lot of, door to door and home visits and everything. And within, 3 days, the chief had organized a large meeting. They had selected the participants, and we were told that they were going to arrive Monday for our training. Later on, I think we would learn that doing it this way, involving the entire community, really contributed to the 0% attrition rate and the overall just 100% dedication of the peer educators. I think we had 2 absentees on 2 given days, and that one of their siblings came to the place I was staying, came to the house of the trainers to explain to us why their sibling would not be attending that day. So this was really, really exciting. And who were the participants? Just to give you a little idea, there were 20 female and 23 male participants. The mean age was 23 years old, with a range from 18 to 49. 78% of the population were not married, 23% were married. 40% of the participants completed middle school, 33% completed high school, and 27% were still in high school. The participants' occupations ranged from being students to community health workers to taxi drivers to cleaning ladies to merchants to woodworkers and teachers. So it really was a very diverse population. And 20% of the participants had participated in a previous HIV/AIDS training. In terms of access, 90% of the participants had access to radio, 30% had access to television, but this doesn't necessarily mean that they had a television at home. There were a few televisions in the village where you could pay to go watch a soccer game or to watch a TV show. 15% of the participants either had access to the internet or were trying to open up an internet account. So as I said, there was actually no internet in the village of Keitao, but it was only 20 kilometers from the city of Kara, and there they have internet cafes where people could go and use the internet. And while 98% of the participants reported having access to condoms, all but one participant said that they had to pay for these condoms. Sorry. Before I show you this short video, I wanted to talk a little bit about, in the first week of the training, we did some team building activities just to make sure that the participants really were going to work well with their fellow peers, since it was a new group of peers. It wasn't, just classmates, or it wasn't just, all people that worked in the same trade. And so we, every day for the first 2 weeks, did a few team building activities.
Sete personas. ¿Está bien? Pied gauche. Oui, comme ça. Non, non. Sécurité. Sécurité. ABC, ABC, ABC.
Okay. And then also I want to share with you, in the manual there was a set of affirmations, and they adapted these affirmations and said them every morning and created songs with these affirmations. And it was a really wonderful way to ensure that everyone arrived on time. So we put in half an hour of padding in the morning, and they would do breathing exercises and affirmations. And so this is a set of affirmations of one of the groups. establishing these, you can turn the lights back on. I think establishing these affirmations during the first few days really gave them a chance to sit there with their buddies and with their peers and to say to themselves, okay, but this is the set of affirmations, you know, that was in the manual. What can we add to this? What does this mean to us? How is this going to guide the process of us learning to be peer educators, learning to be the best, you know, trainers we can be, the best family members, community educators. And so that was really exciting. They loved them too. Like, you'd hear them singing them all around the village, and it was always in my head for the 2 months that I was living there, and they're really beautiful. So during weeks 2 and 3, we focused a lot on the knowledge portion, and this ranged from teaching about prevention and transmission to teaching about nutrition to medical adherence, cultural practices, and then of course there was a lesson in the manual on supportive, optimistic, and positive peers. So it was SOP, but they changed it to POPs because it was peer optimiste, positif, and sympathique. So they actually changed the supportive to sympathetic because they thought that was really important and liked the acronym POPs. So they'd walk around and ask people if they were POPs, and later on you'll see some of the sketchings, they signed things POPs all the time, just kind of as a reminder of this, you know, the importance of social support. So to show you some of how some of the learning took place and the way that they exhibited the learning, I'll show you a few just visuals of some of the sketches they did and explain situations that they brainstormed in relationship to the knowledge that they were learning. So this sketch took place, sorry, I'm saying sketch because that's a skit or a role play, but they called them sketches there, so I think I got into that habit. But this was during the knowledge portion on prevention and transmission, and one thing that they focused on a lot, the peer educators, was fidelity. So in being faithful. So in this sketch, you have one of the peer educators, and he has a few different girlfriends, and he's, you know, sleeping around with them. And there's one scene where his mom finds condoms, and this actually commented too on a lot of these, you know, intergenerational differences, and the mom is upset with him. What are you doing with these condoms? There will be no condoms in my home. Like, my son is not having sex. And so you see that he's having to kind of, you know, sneak around this. And as it turns out, he finds out he's infected, and he sees that he's infected multiple partners. And so it just really brought awareness to these issues and, you know, the complexity and importance of prevention and, you know, how to teach their fellow community members, you know, proper prevention techniques and to talk about condom use. Here's a skit about social support, and here you have a guy that found out that he's HIV positive, and he's saying, I want to kill myself, I'm going to die. And you have the POPs, the supportive, optimistic, sympathetic, and positive peers who are explaining to him with their new knowledge as peer educators, you don't have to feel this way, you don't have to think this way, no one is going to alienate you, there are going to be people that are going to support you. They explained to him what was going on, what his options were. They walked him over to AED, the clinic in the village where he could get some counseling services, and then they helped him, you know, talk about how to explain this to his family, to his friends. And there was one part of this skit where when he told people that he was infected, everyone started running away, and they would, you know, leave the food in the middle of the field and make him run out to get it. And so they exemplified, no, we can eat with these people that are infected, you know, we can hug people that are infected. And so just ways that they thought the community would really relate to learning about this. And this is one of the role plays on cultural practices, and for a lot of the people in the village, the whole idea of female genital cutting or female circumcision, female genital mutilation was really important because it's something that a lot of them believe should not happen anymore. However, it's a tradition, and they were saying, you know, how can we stand up to our elders and to people that have been practicing this for so many generations and say no? And one of the concerns was that often the same blade is reused on many different people. Sometimes there's even a ritual ceremony where there's dances going on and you can select the person that you want to cut you. And so while there were many mixed feelings about this, what they all agreed on is that there needs to be dialogue about it. So in this specific skit, you have a woman who is telling her husband, our daughter is not going to get cut. And so she is having an argument with her husband, and she's supporting her daughter because the daughter's saying, like, Daddy, I don't want to do this. Things are changing. I shouldn't have to do this. It's not safe. And the mother is supporting her. And you actually, it's really interesting because you see this woman taking this really powerful role and saying, this isn't even going to be a discussion. We have decided that this is not best for my child's health. So this brought up a lot of really interesting issues. And lastly, in this skit here, the women are talking about the practice of passing a widowed woman on to her deceased husband's brother. Because often if people are dying of HIV/AIDS, well, if you're gonna pass the woman that's left behind onto someone else's husband, and it goes both ways, then people are just reinfecting people. And in this case, this woman had got infected that way, and so she's talking about it with her friends, and her friends are saying, we don't want this to happen to us, and we should have the right to choose who we marry. And so this also brought up a lot of these issues. So now I'm going to talk about some of the training activities that we did. In order to learn about the different levels of risk for HIV transmission, we played this game called the Traffic Light of Love. And so I started to mention this before, but during the training there were 3 groups. Each of the 3 trainers had their own group, and sometimes for the larger lectures they'd come together and learn together, and they would also present their skits and their songs to each other. So I thought that this activity was really interesting because what we did is we distributed a bunch of strips with different sexual acts on them, and the participants, the peer educators, had to decide what risk level they fell under. So if something was not at all risky...
You want to take the microphone?
Okay, sure.
Or
No, it's okay, I can use this. So if something wasn't risky, then it was green light, go ahead. If there was some risk, some caution involved, that was yellow, and then red was, very high risk. And when I looked at the 3 posters that the groups had created, I found something in common in all of them. Kissing was always either caution at yellow, or sometimes even high risk at red, because there can be a cut in the mouth, and blood or semen or vaginal secretions could enter that way. But vaginal sex with a condom was always green, at the green light, go ahead. So when I asked the participants if they knew about the fact that condoms aren't always 100% effective because sometimes they can break, they said, of course we know that. And so I said to them, well, then that's a direct port of entry. Why would sex with a condom be a green light? And they said to me, I don't understand. We are peer educators, and we are telling people how to stay safe. So if we tell them that using condoms has some cautionary risks, how are they going to listen to us? And I realized that they knew best how to talk to their peers, how to talk to their community, and this was something that I had to accept, that this was just a cultural difference, and that it made sense that they thought like this. And then this was a time to say to them, okay, well, in talking about prevention, you're going to tell them to use condoms, but also, we should talk about, the risks of condoms breaking and things like that. But I thought that was really interesting because there were many times where I had to really step back and realize that I come from, a different set of cultural beliefs, and I'm not always going to be right, and things aren't going to always, what I say isn't going to always make sense to them, and in no way should I expect that they will accept all the information and knowledge that I'm passing to them. But also, there's so much that I can learn from them, and that these issues really are complex, and every community in every place in the world is going to think about them differently. Another example of a game we played was Survivor Island, where they took on fictional roles of power, from being a multimillionaire to a community outreach leader. And the rest of the participants acted as a jury, and they had to decide whose life was the most important life to save. There was a sinking lifeboat, and one person could live. And this was interesting for me too, and a challenge in exploring new paradigms of learning, because the learning style in most of their schooling in Togo has been dictation centered, and here I'm telling them to question people that might be the president or someone that might be a multi-billionaire, and it was just really interesting to explore these new roles. Also, as we'll talk about a little bit later with Global Help, which we want to invite all of you to engage in and to participate on, there's something really wonderful about sharing tools across different trainings. And this is a Chutes and Ladders board that the peer educators created with some high-risk situations, some safe situations. And this is a best practice that was created in Amrita Bahel's experience with prisoners in India. And so we kind of readapted this, and now this board is used by many of the peer educators in some of the projects that they're doing in schools and other community events. And during week 4, we taught the stages of safety, and this is part of the manual, and it's really about avoiding lapses and relapses to unsafe behaviors while emphasizing how to cope in these high-risk situations. So there were some other dances that they created and symbols to discuss the 6 steps to the stages of safety, because it was easy to remember it that way. So in the counseling that they would later on do in their roles as peer educators, it was something that they used. And as I said, they created many songs during the training, so here's another one that I wanted to share with you. And it's really interesting because these songs are really educational tools, because they're things that can be presented at community forums, at schools, and it was just really a great way to relay information. So we had a lot of fun during the training, and it was wonderful, but they also learned a lot. They really, really did. And this you could see not only in the skits and the role plays and the diversity of the questions they came with, the experiences they shared, the knowledge that they had, but also we administered a 30-item questionnaire that's part of the manual that was administered at pre-test and at post-test, and their scores from baseline to post-test showed that they were significant at the alpha level of 0.000. So on average, they had learned, 5 new concepts it really improved on. And there was no difference in knowledge between the female and the male participants. And I found this really interesting. The only group that was significantly different in terms of their knowledge from all the other groups was the group that was still in high school. So the group that was still in high school performed far better than the group that had completed high school. And this might point to the fact that there's more HIV/AIDS education going on in school, because the 30-item test was a test of HIV/AIDS knowledge. And on the self-rating evaluation at the end, all of the peers, showed a significant increase in their ability to teach many of these techniques that they learned, and in order to move their peers across the stages of change and to teach positive attitudes. So When the training was done, we had a big final ceremony, and they like to call these sensibilizations because it's a way to sensibilize the community. And we had the final ceremony in the middle of the market, which was really exciting. It was on a Saturday morning in the middle of the market, a really busy place. It's, everyone's coming through here. And we had about 400 people attend. And there were chairs for the 100 notables, for the people that, the mayors and the chiefs from surrounding villages that came. And then you had just people walking by, stopping by to watch the skits. So just to give you an idea of the energy that was there that day.
Arrivé chez nous, à Québec, dans notre canton. 100% jeunes, 100% jeunes, 100% jeunes.
So the first person you saw, that was the chief of the village, and the second woman was Fati, who's the president of the AED clinic and also one of our trainers. So just to talk a little bit about what's going on now. I left, the training ended, what's going on right now in K-Tau. So the peer educators elected a bureau and a president. They still actually hold weekly meetings, and they developed a few proposal ideas, and with the help of my friend Amida Hussein, who's there, they were able to get a USAID grant to initiate 3 projects. One, to create a Moringa garden, an anti-AIDS club in the high schools, which includes a film screening series, murals, and dancing, and 3 large sensibilizations and radio shows. They've also rented out bars to do trainings for for hairdressers, wood makers, tailors, and other apprentices. Dosa, the president, does counseling sessions in the new office. And, oh sorry, that's small there. And they plan to start a music group with young kids and possibly sell condoms as a way to finance and pay the rent for the office space that they just rented, and to make this really sustainable. And this is actually a picture of the Moringa garden that they planted back in November. And Moringa is a plant that has a lot of nutritional benefits to strengthen the immune system. So a lot of people that don't have access to ARVs, if we've seen that's a problem, they'll take Moringa to help strengthen their immune system. And so this is in late November, but I was just informed that they actually now have 100 trees, and they're going to plant 100 more trees, and they have enough right now to use to actually start selling for food. So in addition, it's an income generating activity that can also help contribute to the sustainability of the project. And this is Dosa, the president. This is one of the film screenings that he's doing, and they use these films called Scenarios in Africa that were made by community members, demonstrating different prevention and other information. And so this is in a school. And they also created several billboards that are now all around K-Tau, all around the village. And so here, this one you see, use a condom or I'll leave you. This one, let's take the test to live a better future. So they're referring to the HIV test. And this one, to avoid AIDS, we must abstain from sex before marriage and be faithful once we're married. So that's the end of my presentation, and I really just want to thank Dr. Barbara Wallace for granting me this opportunity to go to Togo and to work with her manual and adapt it, and the research group on disparities in health. Also Amida Hussein, the Peace Corps volunteer in the village of K-Tau that helped all these arrangements. And Rita Bahel, who shared with me so many best practices from her experience in India and just offered me a lot of support. Plapa Kukpamu, who is a friend of mine in New York, who served as a key informant. And then, of course, the peer educators. So on a last note I want to leave you with, this is another billboard they created. Those living with AIDS will always be our friends and brothers. Okay.
Okay, any questions for action? Go to a microphone.
Okay. Dry sex is the practice of inserting drying agents into the vagina. So this can mean herbs or detergents. And the reason that women would do this would be to preserve the vaginal structure and to make it smaller, and because this would be more desirable to men and would represent that she was being faithful. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your excellent presentation, and to Barbara for supporting this and developing it. It was really spectacular. So my question is, where else has this program in this way been implemented, number one? And number two, I personally can see through contact some other opportunities where in other places in Africa it can be, and so what are the possibilities of that?
Well, the great thing is that the next few presentations that are going to follow me are going to show what they're doing to implement this in other countries.
So the very first training was done in Sierra Leone in 2005 by Dr. Richard Kanwa, and he actually was the first one to pilot the manual, and that was in July of 2005. And then Nana Krantma Ibuafo did a 4-week intensive training in Latte, Ghana in January of 2006. And so we certainly welcome opportunities to replicate the training. I also know, actually it was Annette Johnson, I think, who told me that, I was in Albany and I stopped by this church and they were having a session based on your manual. So the idea is for it to be available in the public domain. Global Help makes it available on the internet, so it's a downloadable document for free dissemination. But we'll hear now from, okay, you have a question, Sharon? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm so glad I heard your presentation. Can you please speak about just securing the space, or where the meetings actually took place, and the government, working with the government there?
Okay. Yeah, well, we didn't work directly with the government. We worked with people in the community, and really, once we spoke with the community chief, he had suggested that we use the space of the elementary school. So it was a lot of house visits involved and just asking people. And when we went to talk to the director of the elementary school, he was really excited about the training, and he let us use that space, actually. So, yeah, people were very supportive of our project.
The preceding program was brought to you by Teachers College, Columbia University. Please visit us online at itunes.tc.columbia.edu.